Go Catch a Goose. Chapter 13. Do you know someone who's having a baby? Ochiko asked. Tuesday afternoon, bright echoes of shoppers jostled the air, bouncing off the atrium's glass walls and high ceilings up to the second-floor balcony of the new Tokyo Peaceful Banking Center, where, for what had to be the 20th time since they'd met, silence deposited itself between Ochiko and Deku. A squishy, syrupy silence. Deku's mask and cap left little to make out his expression, but what were those eyes? He'd gone paralyzed, not a breath or blink, save for eyes that grew in their sockets. He said, instead of answering. Ochiko pulled her bag closer, covering her stomach, and shot a second glance at the baby store. Was it a weird question? Did he know someone who was having a baby or not? It almost felt like Deku had spoken a code word she was supposed to understand. Suddenly, an idea clicked. Is it a secret? Ochiko lowered her voice. You're not supposed to say one word about it, are you? Right, it's definitely a secret. His hand sprang up and waved in non-offense. I haven't said a word to anyone. I wouldn't dare. It's not something I have permission to talk about. Got it. It's a secret. Ochiko mined a zipper over her mouth. A big secret, apparently. Deku let down his hands and nodded solemnly in turn. The tension deflated from Ochiko's shoulders, leaving her feeling silly. She had been certain they were moments away from a bank robbery or a hostage crisis, and of course, she was overreacting to nothing. Again. Well, a baby was a big deal to the parents. It just had nothing to do with her and Deku. Since they stopped, though, her eyes drifted over to the store. Baby Bonanza claimed a fair amount of retail space, enough that Ochiko was surprised she barely noticed it when she first walked by. The storefront windows were the image of a baby's summer dream. Grass, toys, a little slide, swing, and a teddy bear in a stroller. At the store entrance, baby footprints painted the tile floor, toddling up to a feature display that had to be the cutest thing Ochiko had seen all day. Despite herself, her eyes widened, and she burst into a grin. Oh my gosh, look! She gasped. They've got yukatas for babies! The display table was right there at the store entrance, so close that Ochiko felt an inescapable pull to go look. The little mannequins standing on the table barely reached Ochiko's shoulders, and they were all dressed up to go to the fireworks festival, play kiddie games, and eat chocolate bananas with sprinkles. The boys were traditional colors and simple patterns, like the most adorable 2-foot samurai you'd ever seen. The girls were dolled up in pink, yellow, turquoise, or orange, printed with bubbles, kittens, or flowers, and tied in back with bows as big as the babies themselves. Different designs were folded and laid out to choose from, and Ochiko leaned over them, her mouth forming an "Oh." Do you like them? Came from right by her ear. Deku was back beside her, almost leaning into her shoulder, a lift in his voice and a spark in his eyes. Something about the way he said it. Ochiko nearly jumped out of her shoes. Sorry, what am I even doing, marching in here after we made it clear it's a secret? She stuttered, pulling away from the display. I thought they were cute, that's all. Do you want to go look at another store? No, you're fine. It's great if you want to go look. Deku stepped back to give her space. His speech smoothed out in tone, as if the inflection she heard half a second ago hadn't been there at all. It's still a secret if you're just looking, right? We don't have to talk about it right now, and we can still look around if you want to, or not, if you're uncomfortable. Ochiko's heart thundered in her ears. Do you want to look around? Me? His shoulders crawled up, as did his eyebrows. She nodded, and he swallowed and blinked, as if needing double confirmation that he was, in fact, the person she was talking to. I think I'd like to, Deku said, since we're here, only if it's okay with you. She looked him up and down, unsure why Deku said it like that. I'm okay, and we've got a few minutes, right? We've got time, yeah, and the yukatas are really cute, aren't they? Like, this one with fire trucks, Deku said, picking up enthusiasm as he turned back to the display. Fire trucks? Ochiko hadn't seen any fire trucks. Here, Deku pointed it out, and what had appeared to be simple red blocks from outside the store were rows of happy fire trucks racing to the rescue. They are fire trucks! I was just thinking the yukatas for the boys were all traditional, but fire trucks! This is adorable! She picked it up in awe, only to put it down in a split second. Oh, and then that one has puppies! Right? Deku jumped in to see the puppy print. Have you seen little kids dressed up like this for festivals? Sometimes, but usually it's older kids, not babies. These are all so small. What else do they have? She said, scanning the selection. But a price tag dangling from the puppy sleeve caught her attention, and Ochako felt her eyes bulge. Oh boy, that's expensive for something a baby would only wear once or twice. How much? Deku also checked. Yeah, I see what you mean. Not too bad, though. I could get it. I bet it'd be good for photos. Really? You'd pay that much? Ochiko's eyebrows went up, and then she let out a single laugh. I forget you don't have to worry about money anymore. Deku cocked his head. No, I still have to worry about money, but on a different scale. Oh, right. Business expenses, she said. She saw the quarterly reports at Gunhead's agency, and the #1 hero would be on a different level. He had to worry about money, but a baby yukata? I guess it makes sense if you want to buy something nice for pictures. Were you wanting to buy a present for your friend? There was a second's pause, and Deku's eyebrows pinched under the cap. What friend? The one with the secret? Said Ochako. Oh, my friend! He piped up brightly. Is that what we're going to say? It is a friend, right? Not an employee or something? Right, we're friends, Deku confirmed. He paused for a breath, looking around the store again, and then chose the next moment to settle his eyes squarely on her. A present for my friend doesn't sound like a bad idea. What do you think she would like? Ochako? There was her name again, and a softness in how his eyes fell on her. Her chest fluttered, and the hair stood straight up on the back of her neck. Ochako pivoted on the spot, away from Deku and the yukata display, towards the store's interior. Why don't we go look? There's so much cute stuff for babies. I bet you'll know what to get when you see it, she said, heading off. So you think you'd like something cute? Deku followed behind. Definitely. Babies have to have cute stuff. Ochako's heart absolutely pounded. Why did she feel so weird? Of course it was different when they'd been friends for so long. Or more accurately, she'd hammered down the mental wall and convinced herself they were no more than friends. He didn't like her like that. Nothing extra would ever happen in a million years. All the while, this and that and everything in between made her question what was really going on. And now they were dating, which should have fixed it. But it didn't. It just made everything weird. Into the store they went, not in any particular direction, just somewhere, by the demand of Ochako's nerves that they move. Accordingly, they arrived in the aisle of diapers at the back. Big diapers, small diapers with teddy bear mascots, promises of leak-free nights, and then Deku reading out the label of a brand of all-natural, organic, dye-free, biodegradable, baby-friendly something or other. For the baby's sensitive skin, what do you think? He said, turning to Ochako expectantly for her thoughts. Maybe not diapers. I mean, you need them, but for a gift it's not cute or exciting at all, said Ochako. Right, something cute, he agreed. Moving on, baby bath time was around the corner with squirty turtles and fluffy ducky towels. Blankets were on the next aisle, everything from cupcakes to spaceships to penguins hosting tea parties. Deku was taken in by a tower of baby bottles, some practical, others a rainbow of color and designs, taken from their packaging and set up on a tiered display. He went directly for the smallest one, a little pink thing that he delicately picked up between his index finger and thumb. It says for preemies and newborns, he marveled, showing it to Ochako. Only 100 milliliters. I didn't realize they were so small. Oh my gosh, it's tiny. It fits in the palm of my hand. She felt a need to whisper, carefully taking the little bottle when he passed it her way. I always thought of baby bottles being way bigger, like a water bottle, or the rest of these big ones, actually. But this one's so small, like it's for a doll. Is this all they eat when they're born? I guess newborns are really small, so their stomachs are small too, Deku said. They continued on, weaving through aisles and displays, And all the while, Ochiko felt like the space between her and Deku had changed. The physical distance was the same, not bigger or smaller than the last time she'd walked around shopping with him. The difference was in some quality of the air itself. Like you took a cup of tea and put it in the microwave. By all means, it was still the same tea, like Deku was still the same person she'd known for 5 years. But 5 years as friends and now only dating, maybe that was enough cause to have things she needed to properly think about. What was he doing? Taking her window shopping, getting smoothies, and looking at her a bit nervous with his ears turning red. What was he thinking? Reading the instructions on a tube of diaper rash cream, which was not a fun gift. If she looked at something, he was a second behind, wanting to see what she had found. And if she tilted her head, questioning whether or not an alphabet puzzle was a good idea, he put it right back on the shelf. She needed to try harder to come up with suggestions. Deku was going to give this to somebody after all, but more than anything in the store, her mind was occupied with how he couldn't keep from fussing with his mask every 15 seconds. And then he kept giving her these purposeful looks like she was the authority in the field. And while she could confidently say almost everything here was cute, Ochiko didn't know that much about babies. Coming to the last of the aisles, the store opened up for the big items: strollers, high chairs, and rows of cribs. Cribs were a relatively recent import. Like Ochiko, for example, had had a futon on the floor where she slept until she was 4 years old. "We don't need to buy a crib as a present, right?" she said as they walked through. "No, we don't need to get a crib today," he said. Ochiko paused to spin a solar system mobile dangling over a metal frame. "This is cute, though." "It is cute," Deku agreed. "Yeah, I loved space stuff when I was little. I had all the stars and planets in my room," she said. Now that they'd paused, she noticed the crib had a mesh cover. It pulled out of the headboard, rolled under the mobile and over the full opening of the crib, and locked in on the other side. Ochiko cocked her head. "I wonder what this is for. Do you put something on it?" "Let me see." Deku pressed down on the mesh cover and cocked his head. "No, I don't think it'd hold much weight. It kind of reminds me of mosquito netting, but they just get in from the other sides." Said Ochiko. She'd mentioned the mesh cover in passing interest, but now that Deku was here, oh boy. Inspection commenced with deciphering the child-proof lock that held the cover in place. Once he had that opened, and closed, and opened, and closed, he retested the weight, noting it would keep out something like a cat. Then he inspected the crib from the sides, intensified his glare, and squatted down to stare up through the mesh cover from the baby's point of view. Ochiko was struck with the familiarity of the inspection. This was Deku, all right. She'd watched him fixate on quirk training, homework, or assembling props for the school festival. Why not a weird crib, too, even if they'd established that they weren't buying it? Is this what they were going to do on their date? Stay here, looking at a crib until they figured it out? Suddenly, his concentration broke, and he spun from the crib back to her in alarm. "Ochiko?" "Did you figure it out?" she asked. "Oh, no, not yet. It was quiet, and for a second I thought you might have left," he said. "I'm still here. Sorry if it was quiet. Just thinking." Why would he think she'd leave? Is it a bit much to think about? "I guess you could say that," said Ochiko, though she was hardly thinking about babies and cribs when Deku was here with her on a date. It didn't feel like a date. "I really don't know why they put that on a crib. Maybe you can look it up. What's the brand name?" "I think it might have been on the side. Wait, I think that's a startup support company." Just then, an idea sparked in Deku's eye. "It's to keep the baby from flying away. And look, here on the legs, there's metal hooks that you can use to chain the whole crib down to the floor." "Of course, that makes perfect sense." Ochiko mirrored the revelation with a clap. "If it tries to fly up like this..." "The cover keeps them in," Deku said, resolutely finishing the thought. "And it's mesh, so if they fly up and get stuck in it, it's breathable." "Yes! Oh my gosh, something like that happened when I was in elementary school. There was this really little baby, only a few weeks old, and the mom put it down for a nap, and she had the balcony open for laundry, and it flew out of the house. At first, they didn't know if someone stole it or if it flew away on its own. They called in a bunch of heroes, and everyone in the neighborhood was searching for hours. Deku gaped, his jaw dropping so far that the mask was pulled off his nose. That's terrible. Was the baby okay? Yeah, they found it on the neighbor's roof, just sleeping up there on the shingles, she said. But imagine how scary that would have been for everyone else. I can imagine. Out the window, wow. No wonder they make cribs with covers on top, said Deku, looking stunned as he fixed his mask. If, my friend's baby had your quirk, do you think she needs something like this so you wouldn't have to worry about the baby floating off? Not my quirk, but probably with a different flying variation. Ochiko shook her head. I need my hands, so some mittens would be a whole lot easier than a crib that you have to chain to the floor. Oh, right, Deku said, seemingly relieved. Mittens would be a lot simpler. It's pretty rare for babies to have quirks, though, isn't it? Something like 1%. Yeah, but 1%'s enough to make you wonder. Did your parents ever worry about you floating away? Maybe. I didn't use my quirk till I was 4, and I couldn't float myself until I was older and practiced a lot, said Ochiko. But there was a time when I was little that I thought everything I touched with my fingers would float, and so it did. I couldn't touch or pick up anything, and I bet you can guess the house was a mess. Like one time we had strawberry milk on the ceiling, and my mom and dad went around sniffing to find out what smelled. My mom actually put Band-Aids on my fingers after that, not covering all of my finger pads, which would definitely keep me from using my quirk. She put them around the middle of my fingers like rings and said I wouldn't be able to float things. But wrapping something around my fingers like that doesn't physically interfere with my quirk at all. I could still float things, but it made me think my quirk wouldn't work, so it didn't. And I could touch and pick up anything I wanted without a problem. So she had me be Band-Aid fingers for a few weeks, and then... Mid-sentence, Ochiko's mouth went dry. Deku was watching her. He wasn't merely entertaining her blabbering. His full focus was on her like he had 2 minutes to memorize the details of a security briefing. A minute ago, he'd been busy looking at cribs and bottles, and now his eyes locked on her in a way that didn't feel like just a friend. And then? He prompted. Ochiko's thought had danced away. Sorry, what was I saying? Your mom put Band-Aids on your fingers. Right, like a placebo effect. It didn't do anything. They headed out of the crib section as Ochiko told the rest of the story. Her mom had a similar quirk, and so she wrapped a Band-Aid around one of her own fingers and demonstrated that, float or no float, it had no effect whatsoever. If Ochiko's was the same, it meant she did not automatically float things either. The Band-Aids were there to teach her that her quirk was under her control, hers to use or not use all along. Except the accidents. There were plenty more messes before she got it figured out. Wasn't it tricky to raise kids with quirks? Weren't moms clever to figure it out? Not even a baby, a typical 4-year-old, first manifesting their quirk was a challenge. They wandered into the baby clothes as the story rounded out, all set to explore racks of frilly dresses and silly t-shirts. Here, for the first time since they'd entered the store, Deku's brand appeared, and Ochiko's instant favorite was the pair of green lightning shorts with "Smash" printed on the bum. Deku's attention followed her every step she took, watching her point out clothes, listening to her childhood story, and prodding her heart to keep up the pounding. Ochiko glanced at him too. The tuft of green sticking out the back of his hat looked soft as ever. The thought that she was, in fact, his girlfriend, was still decidedly weird. She hadn't had a chance to think carefully, rationally, about her relationship with Deku. It'd been out of the question until last night when he called. Work kept her busy all day, and the breaks between tasks came with text messages to answer and nosy coworkers to avoid. You'd think she'd have done some thinking last night, awake in bed with a burst of energy like she'd chugged one of those drinks with 10,000% the daily recommendation of B vitamins and caffeine. But that time wasn't spent thinking. No, it was like a big white screen washed over every thought in her head. Deku as her boyfriend? She conjured up a big blank nothing. like being blinded by a flashlight 3 centimeters away aimed directly into her pupils. Like the TV was broken and not even showing static, shined as a solid block of white. Like she'd failed to study for a test, and when it landed on her desk, not only could she not answer the questions, the paper was invisible. This wasn't rocket science. She'd known him for 5 years and liked him for almost as long. Ochako should have been able to put 2 and 2 together and have an idea of what this meant or how it would work out. But instead, her heart was in her ears. She stayed up until midnight making donuts, and she had absolutely no idea what she was doing. What was going on between them now? The answer hid behind a loading circle running in perpetual motion, refusing to let the video move forward more than half a second at a time. And, oh yeah, he didn't just ask her to date. He asked her to marry him first, which meant what? And she certainly hadn't agreed to marry him, but she was dating him now, right? So what did that mean? She didn't have any answers. They were rhetorical questions meant to stir up ponderings of the world and the experience of being human, rather than normal questions with practical, real-life answers. Should she have some more questions? Ones you ask out loud, like, "Hey, Deku, why do you want to marry me all of a sudden?" He was here with her, though, on a date, dividing his attention between her and the sleepy elephant pajamas. Like the newborn bottle from earlier, they were so small, and though Ochako couldn't see him smile, his eyes said everything. He'd always liked kids, of course, and Ochako thought the baby stuff was pretty cute, too, but Deku was really into it. He picked up a yellow and white checker shirt with a "look at this," showing Ochako the embroidered flowers in the pocket, almost like it was for his little girl. Wait, for his little? Ochako's brow pinched together as she found herself entertaining the weirdest thought she'd had all day. It had the quality of a tabloid conspiracy, full of drama and void of any sense, except that Deku was reading all the labels, trying to figure out how the crib worked, and he'd asked her to get married. Maybe he and this friend... But that... No, it didn't make sense. Deku wouldn't do something like that. And if he did, why in the world would he have asked Ochako out on a date? No way. It was utterly ridiculous, and Ochako shook her head to clear the thought. Deku must have seen, because he quickly put down a pair of baby overalls with an apologetic, "Maybe not this." "Yeah, it might be hard to get to the diaper," said Ochako, trying to draw herself back to the present. Right. Gotta think about the diaper," Deku agreed. "You wouldn't happen to know the gender, would you? Or have any guesses? That'd be useful for picking out clothes." "Me? I've got no idea. It's about a 50-50 chance, right?" "Yeah, if it's still a secret, then it's probably too early to know anyways." "Not necessarily," said Deku. "There's a blood test that's not too expensive and you can check almost immediately. Some of the baby's DNA gets into the mother's bloodstream, and they run the test to see if there's a Y chromosome. It's primarily for checking for genetic disorders, but tells you if it's a boy or a girl, too." "Really? I thought they checked, on an ultrasound," said Ochako. "Yeah, that's what they normally do, but I learned about the blood test yesterday. I started reading about pregnancy and such when I heard you were pregnant." She sent him the side eye. "You mean your friend?" "Right, my friend, sorry." He bobbed his head in quick apology. Ochako couldn't help but watch him, 5 seconds later, browsing the little bitty pajamas. What friend was this that Deku was so excited about buying a present for this other woman's baby while he was supposed to be on a date with Ochako? Was he more involved than just a friend? Okay, no. She'd already concluded that did not make sense. Ochako needed to let that thought go. Shopping for baby stuff hadn't been the original plan, and she'd been the one who came in and started it. Still, why was she even thinking so much when they were just killing time? Pajamas in hand, Deku met her eye and quickly turned back to the clothing rack. Maybe not this either. Wait, those are cute. Ochako stopped him, shaking herself from her thoughts. Which ones? Deku looked for the cute thing. What you just put back. Can I see? Oh, really? I thought you... never mind, he said, spinning to retrieve the pajamas. You like these? With the sheep and the fluffy clouds, and it's soft. Ochiko said, rubbing one of the footsies. And it could be for a boy or a girl, too, since you don't know which one it is yet. Deku double-checked. I see. It could be gender neutral. Yeah, since it's not all pink and blue. And it's cute? It's really cute. How is it compared to what we've looked at so far? Well, the dresses are way cuter, but gender neutral's a safe bet. Do you think you want to get some baby clothes for your friend? I think this stuff is the cutest if it's not too expensive. I think it's a good idea if you think so, Deku said. It's fun to look, too. Yeah? Let's see what else they have before you get the pajamas, though. They continued looking, commenting on buttons, stripes, ballerinas, or heroes. Between pointing at cartoon trains or kittens, Deku adjusted his mask. Ochiko held onto her bag strap, testing the stitching under her fingers, ignoring the weird feeling in her gut in favor of gushing over a polka dot shirt. The same designs ranged from preemie to 2 years old. The massive size difference showed just how little they were and how fast the baby grew. Deku continued the search, diligently checking every rack and display for the perfect gift. If he thought it was cute, he picked it up to show her, to gauge her reaction. She couldn't help but sense an underlying pressure in the atmosphere. She couldn't place what it was. Whether it was his posture, movements, or focus, she felt there was something different. It probably wasn't a big deal, but had he been off today? Well, she'd been a mess, but what about him? Coming to her agency this morning, the text they'd exchanged, and then, yeah, he was watching her again. She turned to a rack and could follow him in the corner of her eye. He seemed happy, walking around with her, and it wasn't such a bad thing if he looked at her, even if it was a bit off. On Deku's end, the rustle of clothes and clicks of hangers came to a standstill, and he stood in place looking at the clothing rack as the excitement he'd shown so far flickered away. He exhaled a slow, quiet breath and readjusted his mask. Ochiko, I think I realized something a minute ago, Deku said. Hesitantly, he turned away from the clothes to face her. Looking at all of this stuff for, my friend, I feel like I owe you an apology. Oh, an apology? To the same tune as, we need to talk or come to the faculty office after class. Ochiko's stomach dropped. She swallowed and carefully, softly asked, What for? Why? I think there might have been a misunderstanding earlier, he confessed, eyes cast down. You told me, that you wanted to buy me a shirt, and I said not to because my mom buys so many of them that I already have a whole closet full, but it didn't seem like the right way to say it. And now, looking around here with you, I realized that it can be fun to pick out something for someone else, and that I didn't consider why you'd want to buy me a shirt, just that I don't need one, so I'm sorry about that. Ochiko blinked slowly. Buying him a shirt? What in the world was he? Oh my gosh, you mean like almost an hour ago when we were talking after we met? You were telling me how your mom bought your clothes. Yeah. I did say that, didn't I? The cringe was coming back, but she tried to suppress it with an awkward smile. I mean, it just slipped out before I could think. I don't need to buy you a shirt, especially if you don't need any, and then we won't be wasting any money, right? You don't need to apologize. Are you sure? You seemed disappointed about it earlier, said Deku. I'm sure. Really, I didn't want to buy you a shirt that much. I completely forgot about it until now. Oh, you forgot? Yeah, I guess it didn't seem that important. You were still thinking about it? All this time? She asked. Not the whole time. Well, I'm sorry. Now that you mention it, I should have forgotten about it too, he said, turning away and fixing his mask. What was it we were looking at? Deku moved back to browsing clothes. First, he turned his head quickly, and then his legs shuffled away. Watching him robotically stop at the next rack over, Ochiko took in a breath of bewilderment. What was that all about? The shirt thing. And now he was apologizing for not forgetting about it. All this while, She'd assumed she felt weird because something was wrong with her. Meanwhile, Deku had been fussing with his mask, analyzing everything she did, and worrying that she was disappointed because he told her not to buy a shirt almost an hour ago. Lips pursed tight. Ochako cleared the space between her and Deku in 3 steps, coming up to his side. She gave a single tap on his shoulder and looked up at him when he turned. "Hey, Deku," she said, voice low. "Are you okay?" "What?" he asked, like a half squeak. "Like, are you nervous? You've been, I don't know, different today, and I feel like I'm under surveillance. You're watching me like a hawk." "Am I?" His eyes widened, ears turning red. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I must have been making you uncomfortable." No, it's okay." Ochako reached for Deku, gripping his arm above the elbow. "You don't have... Well, I was going to say you don't have anything to worry about, but that seems presumptuous." "No, I'm fine." He jumped in. "I'm sorry. I should have planned things better, but I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me." "How could I not? If we're going on a date, I don't want you to be uncomfortable the whole time." Ochako tugged on his arm. His whole body was rigid, red burned to scarlet. Deku's whole forehead heated up, along with the ears, the bridge of his nose, and the freckles peeking out from under the mask. She'd hit the nail on the head, probably whacked it too hard, and seeing his reaction, her heart that had been pounding all day chose that moment to soften and melt. Oh no, poor Deku. He was totally stressed out. "It's not such a bad thing to be nervous," she tried to reassure him. "More like, I'm glad it's not just me. Like, if I were the only one feeling weird, it'd be like something was wrong. I keep thinking, what in the world am I doing on a date with Deku in a baby store of all places? We've known each other for how long, and now I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. But this is different for both of us, isn't it? You feel weird, don't you?" His gaze dipped down to the arm she held, and he swallowed. "It is different," Deku admitted, only loud enough for her to hear. "And I'm having trouble. I can't tell what you're thinking, so I'm not sure what to do." You're not giving me an easy thing to answer." Ochako turned her head aside with a grimace. "If I understood what I was thinking, I'd tell you, but I'm not really sure." "That's all right. You don't have to force yourself." "You know I don't want anything from you, right?" she added. "I know basically every other person you meet wants you to give them money or solve their problems. I just want to be here with you. I like being around you and talking to you, and I know you're fun, and you always work hard, and you're kind, and if something happened, you're someone I could rely on. So I was really happy that you invited me." For the next moment, Deku stood perfectly quiet and still. The muscles loosened where she held his arm, and his eyes fixed on her, pupils growing wide. Though the bright red had cooled from his face, a tinge of pink pinched his ears. Then Deku inhaled sharply and held the breath, another moment required to convert air into words. I never would have guessed that you thought that of me. I'm glad that you came too, even though I haven't figured everything out." "It is different, isn't it? Since this is a date," Ochako said. "It's supposed to be. I'm not sure how a date's supposed to go. I've never been on a date before." She blinked up at him. "Really? Never? Not even once? I guess that's strange." "A little, but it means I got to be your first date." His eyes shifted up, and she noticed something. The whole day he'd spent sending not-so-secret glances. It was almost like he was looking at someone else. The way Deku looked at her now felt like the first time he'd actually seen her there. Ochako was guilty too. Her thoughts and emotions had gotten the best of her, and she forgot another person was here dealing with his thoughts and emotions too. Deku didn't cease to be human when his name landed on the top of the hero chart, and she knew that, of course, but it was so hard to imagine that some of those feelings could be feelings for her. Deku hadn't just asked her out on a date. He would have had to cancel other obligations to meet her on short notice. He'd showed up at Gunhead's agency yesterday, too, and done a terrible job pretending worry wasn't bleeding out of him. He'd kept in touch all this time, after they no longer met every morning for class, while plenty of others with much quieter schedules gradually stopped chatting and moved on with their own lives. Which meant something Ochiko still couldn't explain, but if Deku was 10% as confused as she was, then it was more than enough. He let out a half laugh, looking at her hand where she still held his arm. Well, thanks for being here. I hope I can be someone you can rely on too. Only then, the odd thing stirred again in her stomach, and Ochiko remembered that she was holding Deku's arm. She pulled her hand away promptly, but not too fast, setting it back on her bag. Oh, sorry, Deku said, stepping back once his arm was free, and shyly reached up to adjust his mask. Just then, nearby in the clothing section, a baby cried. The voice was the saddest, most delicate whimper that both Ochiko and Deku turned by instinct to see what was the matter. The mother bent over a stroller, pulled out a chubby little boy, and laid his head on her shoulder with a pat on the back. The crying was over within the first pat, and forgetting the big tears still wet on his cheek, the baby lifted his head and lit up with a smile directed at Ochiko and Deku. Goo, 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 he gurgled out, big round eyes staring at both of them. Someone's talkative today. Goo, 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 his mom cooed, pushing the stroller along. Gaga wasn't in his vocabulary yet, but the whole way walking into the back of the store, the baby sang out, goo, 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 until he ran out of breath, and then started right back up again once he caught his breath. Goo, 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 goo. The baby watched Ochiko and Deku until the mom and the stroller rolled out of sight. They're really cute at that age, aren't they? Said Ochiko. They are, Deku agreed. I think he was looking at you. At me? No, definitely at you, seen right through the disguise. I don't think so. He's still too young, and he was smiling so much. He had to be looking at you, said Deku. Ochiko smothered a snort with her hand. Oh no, the little ones see through everything, and you've got a red cap. I heard babies like looking at bright colors. Maybe. You're wearing red too. It looks better on you than me. Oh, you're right. Ochiko checked her skirt and then sent a sharp look to Deku. No, hold up. He was looking up, not at my skirt. He had to be looking at you. Admit it, you're a kid magnet. Deku's cheeks pinched up with a smile. We'll say he was looking at both of us. Maybe, she said suspiciously, but mostly you. He gave up the argument, and a few seconds passed between them. Quiet, but a pleasant quiet, and almost quiet, with a toy singing happy birthday from down the aisle. What do you think about starting a family? Deku asked. Ochiko hummed. When I was little, I always thought I'd get married someday and have a family. Not like I'd planned my life out or anything, just this was how it was supposed to go. But it seems more complicated now. More complicated. I can understand that, said Deku. So, something you'd wanted but not now. Yeah, like you're supposed to start thinking when you're about to turn 30, she said. What about you? He tucked his chin and tugged on his cap. I can't say I thought much about it at all. There was already enough pressure in high school, and after what happened with Shigaraki, everything with the hero industry piled on top. Getting married or having a family, much less a girlfriend, not even on the radar, said Ochiko. No, I couldn't imagine it. It didn't seem like something that could fit in my life. I can't blame you, though. You're incredible for handling all that you do, said Ochiko, and then her mouth, with a mind of its own, pitched in with, But you changed your mind. I guess I did, he agreed. I realized it was worth it. Ochiko's grin and laugh came out instantaneously. Heat in her ears followed half a second later, and she ducked her head to the side to shake it off. Okay, I get that much, but what about when you were younger? You never thought of it then? Or is that just something girls do? No, I don't remember thinking about much other than heroes, said Deku. And the girls wouldn't talk to me anyways. Oh, well, they're lost, huh? Ochiko paused for a second. You know, I always thought if I'm going to have kids, I definitely want to have two. I always wanted a little brother or sister growing up, and my mom did too, but my parents couldn't afford a second one. Do you think you'll have twins? Deku asked. Twins? Who knows? Wouldn't that be something? Said Ochiko. But it'd be great if they were close in age. A year or so apart isn't unheard of, and then they can play together and be friends. Deku's head tilted a small angle. His brows drew together, and he looked straight at her. Asked Ochiko. Did I say something weird? No, just, how would... Deku said, then stopped, blinked, and abruptly looked to the far side of the room. How what? She said, leaning to see what he looked at. Did you ever want a sibling when you were growing up? No, I was too busy to notice not having a sibling, but Ochiko. He took a breath, looking at her again. You said you definitely want two kids? So, if the babies are a year or so apart, and the first one is born in January, then in February or March you'd want to get pregnant with the next one right away? I guess that'd be how it'd work. Have the first baby and get pregnant again. Oh, if the first one is born in January, they could even have the same birth year, said Ochiko. The same year, Deku repeated flatly. Why? Does two kids sound like too much for you? Deku looked flushed, and his shoulders grew rigid. I can do it, or I think I can do it if that's what you want. Then Ochiko gasped as her skin lit on fire, and she waved her arms in absolute denial. No, we're not talking about right now. It's a dumb thing I thought about when I was like 10 years old. Abstract, distant future. I don't know nothing about having two babies. Right, of course. We're not talking about anything right now. Deku stumbled back, holding onto a display. Ochiko turned, covering her face with her hands. Her first date with Deku, she told him she wanted two babies. I'm so sorry, Deku said. It's okay, Ochiko said. It wasn't impossible, though. Her and Deku, 10 years from now. But the picture was too fuzzy and made her stomach feel weird. She could still hear a little voice towards the back of the store that only knew the first half of Goo Goo Gaga. Ochiko breathed in and out in a slow, straight line. Okay, Deku, since we're saying crazy things, I just have to ask this. It's going to sound nuts, and I know there's no way, but I just want to be really sure so I don't have to think about it again. Yeah? Deku asked, still recovering. It's not your baby, right? Ochiko asked. What? He was confused. Ochiko cringed. It's just that you're really into looking at baby stuff. Like, I know this doesn't make any sense, but is there something you're trying to tell me? Like, did you accidentally get someone pregnant or something? What? No, I know it's not mine. I get it. It's a bit of an overreach for me to be invested, he said apologetically. Invested. Ochiko's heart twinged in a way she wasn't proud of, but this was supposed to be her date with him. Just someone you know. Right. Is it also... She looked at him curiously. Someone that I know? Deku paused a second and then said, Yes, but it's a secret, right? Oh. Ochiko blinked once and turned her head as if she hadn't heard. Well, that explained why he needed to keep it a secret. It was someone she knew. And with that information, her eyes ballooned as the store around her transformed into a baby wonderland. The little dresses with frills and flowers, had they been so pink and pretty 30 seconds ago? How had she missed the fox and kitten that chased the butterflies and said, "Let's be friends"? And looking back at the yukatas, her heart fluttered. She knew the person who was having the baby. Bells were ringing in Ochiko's head, now with one huge question. Who was it? Mina, right before her wedding? But she'd had a pregnancy scare about a year ago and broadcasted it to the moon. There was no way she'd kept it a secret and Deku managed to hear about it first. Who else had someone to get her pregnant? Momo? She and Ochiko weren't particularly close, but Deku was friends with Todoroki. It would make sense for him to hear about it first. But no, Ochiko couldn't see it. They were so conservative. The most affection she'd seen between them was when they'd stand next to each other slightly more often than to be a complete coincidence. Could they be? No way. Maybe way? Accidents happened. Or, gosh, it could be anyone, couldn't it? More than just the girls that graduated in their class. She and Deku knew lots of people. Her fingers twitched against her purse with the idea that she could get out her phone, send a few messages, and figure out who it was. But she wasn't going to do that. Deku had promised to keep it a secret, so that was what she would do too. Our food's been delivered. I just got a notification, Deku said, phone in hand. Deku's statement startled Ochiko out of her thoughts. Already? We haven't picked out something for your friend yet. It's not a rush if you want to look around. I don't mind, Deku said. Someone she knew was having a baby. Ochiko glanced to her side to see an adorable bonnet with bunnies, and thoughts of re-exploring the store danced in her head. Not a good idea. They could be stuck in here for hours. We pretty much looked at the whole place. What did you think was the cutest? You can go with that, she suggested instead. Me? What did you like? No, you have to pick. You're the one giving the present. He stared her down for 3 seconds and took a deep breath. Understood. The next few minutes moved fast. Deku set off like he'd planned the shopping operation weeks in advance, with a perfect mental map of every cute item in the store. He grabbed the teething rings with squirrels and acorns, solar system mobile, and polka dot bottles, and aimed for the register with everything stuffed under his arm, only to abruptly pivot back into the baby clothes. They'd returned for gender-neutral pajamas, a pack of newborn mittens, and to have something that seemed like it was from him, he snagged the little shorts with smash on the bum. All in all, they left with a very big bag.